Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening. How are you doing? Rachel, Megan, we are hosting today two uh, colleagues from University of Cincinnati and University of Kentucky to speak with us regarding personal essays and CVs. So before we start, I usually take the time to present who we are or to introduce who we are for whoever is joining us for the first time. So Education USA, we are an advising program, a grant by the State Department of USA. We operate in 2 centers here in Egypt and around 470 other centers worldwide in around 130 other countries. So mainly we are educational advisors working with you towards following a certain 5-step system we have for you to go ahead and join your dream university in the USA. We are the official source of information for USA higher education here in Egypt. So you'll find us in 2 centers here in Cairo at Amir East, Egypt, and in Alexandria as well in Amir East. And whatever it is that you can think of regarding education in USA, higher education in USA, please do not be shy to seek help from us. We will share our contact details throughout the session, of course. So I do not want to take long. I will leave the microphone for Megan and Rachel. If you would go ahead. Hello.
Hi.
Yes, hello. How are you, Megan? Sorry to keep you.
Hello. No, it's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Yes, I'm Megan Lindell, and Rachel is here as well from the University of Kentucky. It's your preference in terms of who you'd like to start today. Do you have any preference in terms of the presentation?
Me, myself, no.
Okay.
Not at all. Go ahead.
Okay. If it's okay with Rachel, I can go first. We've both prepared presentations in regards to the personal essays and CVs. I'm going to focus a little heavier on the CVs and resumes, and I think Rachel's going to focus a little heavier on the personal statements, just so we don't have as much overlap. Does that sound good, Rachel? Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up my presentation here. Okay. All right, and I hope everyone can see. Okay, so let's see, make sure I can get to the next screen. Okay, so hello again. This is me, Megan Lindell. I'm an international admissions counselor, a senior admissions counselor with the University of Cincinnati. I'm also our Middle East and North Africa territory manager. So for any students applying to the University of Cincinnati, I'm happy to serve as a primary contact. I work primarily on the undergraduate admissions side. However, I can connect you with the graduate program contacts. So feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address, megan.lindell@uc.edu. I also process freshman credentials from all over the world outside of the Middle East and North Africa. And I review for about 11 of our 10 of our 11 academic colleges and departments across the campus on the undergrad admission side. Here's a brief overview of the University of Cincinnati and where we're located. We're here in Ohio, in Cincinnati, right at the bottom on the border of Kentucky. We also border Indiana. We have about 46,000 students campus-wide, so we're fairly large, second largest university in the state of Ohio. We're a Tier 1 research institution. There's only 131 of these in the United States. And we are ranked 69 out of all of the public universities in the US. We have about 3,500 plus international students. Our top sending countries are from India, Vietnam, China. We have a lot of students from Saudi Arabia, and we also do have a partnership with the Future University of Egypt, FUE. And so we do have a growing number of students from Egypt as well at the undergrad and graduate levels. We offer anything from undergrad up through graduate, PhD. We have a medical school, a law school, a pharmacy school, a conservatory of music. And our leading programs majors are typically engineering, business, technology, and visual performing arts, although we also have the humanities as well. And then this is just a little overview. We have 11 different academic departments, or we call them colleges. So 9 of them are actually on our main campus, and we have 2 branch campuses. So when we're talking about majors, I really definitely would point you to our website, because we have over 350 academic programs of study, even just at the undergrad level, and hundreds at the grad level. So today, our topic, I wanted to give you a quick overview just of the application process and how personal essays and resume CVs fit into this process, okay? So on the undergrad side, just because that's kind of where my focus lies, if you're applying as an international freshman to our university, we do use the common application, and so does the University of Kentucky. So we're both on this common application system. You can select up to 20 universities to apply through the Common App. Just pay attention to deadlines. They're all going to vary by institution. And application fees will also kind of vary. There may be some fee waivers available. And then when we're reviewing, we're looking at these quantitative or academic factors and these qualitative or more holistic review factors. Again, this will also vary by institution, so definitely do your research. Also, in 2021 fall and 2022 fall, we've actually moved to a test optional admissions process for freshmen, and I think a lot of universities in the US are doing this, especially in regards to the pandemic and COVID-19. So really do pay attention to how the process is changing a little bit over the next year or cycle or two. It is really to allow more equity and access for students across the country and across the world, around the world. So this is kind of our statement that we've put out there, and most universities will have a test optional FAQ page that you can access that probably will be continually updated at this point in time. So the quantitative factors, just to do a quick overview, because we're not really focusing on these today. Most universities are going to be looking, if you're applying as a freshman, to those official high school transcripts. Obviously for graduate school, they're going to be looking at your college transcripts and degrees received. Proof of English is typically going to be required. Even if we're test optional, we're still looking for that proof of English. And then proof of math as well, depending on the major. It could be the SAT, ACT. We have an internal UC math placement test. We also review A levels and IB scores. If you're at a grad level, it could be a GED or a GMAT. But then also it could be that we're test optional and we're just looking at more holistic review factors and your transcripts. The qualitative factors are where we're going to focus today. So holistic review, you hear this a lot in the United States and also a lot of other countries, especially at the undergrad level. So when we're reviewing, we're not just reviewing your grades and your test scores, even though those are very important, but we're also reviewing your writing samples, your personal statements. We're looking potentially at an interview in some cases, extracurricular activities, your employment, your experience, even familial duties. All of these can be listed through the resume or CV. The rigor of your coursework, the performance, what you've taken advantage of in terms of your AP classes or your A levels or your IB, or if you're at a graduate level, what kind of, or undergrad level, what kind of research you've done, teaching experience. And then your letters of recommendation are very important, or references as well. So today we're going to focus in on these 2 areas, writing samples, and then your CV or resume. Okay, so starting with the writing samples, what does your essay or personal statement tell us about you? So for undergrad applicants, basically we're going to look at who you are as a person, your values and goals, your interests, how you write and communicate, and what you're going to bring to our community. Are you a good fit for our community? We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. I'm going to give you some examples. For the graduate level, we're looking a lot more to your academic and professional experience, previous research, teaching, immediate and long-range aspirations, and then how the specific program will meet these goals that you've outlined for us and these achievements that you've already accomplished through your undergraduate studies or grad studies if you're going on to a PhD. So your essay should tell us what, so what, and now what. This would be kind of more in the framework for an undergrad essay, right? So you're telling a story. How did this impact you? And then how did this change you for the future? What positive impact did it have? What did you learn from the experience? And Rachel will kind of elaborate more on all of these topics as well. And then undergrad applicants, I wanted to just kind of throw out there a few topics that we tell you to kind of be careful in regards to these topics or maybe avoid them. We get a lot of stories about winning or losing a big game, which can be a big experience for someone in high school. So it's not that you can't share this experience, but I would say that if you're sharing it, try to share something that would be unique that we wouldn't be reading on a bunch of other essays. Or not making the team, that would be kind of one that you'd want to avoid. Anything really personal like relationship problems, things like that. Or talking about maybe telling someone else's story or talking about something negatively. I would say that you want to tell your own story, be unique, and then kind of give it a positive spin of what you've learned, how it's helped you to grow. Especially now during COVID and the pandemic, there's going to be, a lot of experiences and challenges that you faced this year, and definitely you can bring that into your writing samples or share that in a section of your application. On the Common App, I think they'll even be asking you a question about that just in general on the application that's separate from the essay, so you'll still have a chance to kind of explain that component of your application process and journey. These are some examples of writing prompts through the Common application. The most common ones here you can see are highlighted, okay? So for undergrads, students like to choose the one where they can kind of share about their background or identity, something unique about them, an accomplishment, and something they've learned about themselves and how they've grown, or they can pick a different topic. So basically, if you have an essay you've written that you feel you want to share with us that shows your writing ability, that shows a little bit about yourself, you pretty much can share it through this last topic of your choice. So that's a common one as well. Up to 650 words would be that essay. And then pay attention to each university having specific personal statements or additional essays that are required. So for the University of Cincinnati, we ask for your personal statement to cover why you are choosing your top 3 application or academic programs on your application, and to give us a little bit more information about why you're interested in those programs and why you've chosen to study those programs at the University of Cincinnati. It's only up to 250 words, but be careful, do not use the same essay or any portion of the essay that you used on the Common App essay section, because it is a different question. Okay, moving on to your resume or CV. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about resume because that's typically what I'm seeing at the undergrad level, but we'll talk a little bit about the difference between those two. So what does it tell us about you? You're going to, of course, list your achievements, but context is important. So you want to keep in mind, how do your achievements inside and outside the classroom relate to the goals of our institution and the program that you're applying to, especially on the graduate level? How have you shown developing interest or achievement in your intended field of studies? So you're going to obviously have a lot more to share if you're applying at the graduate level. But if you're applying for the undergraduate freshman level or a transfer student, you can share which classes you've taken during high school or the beginning of your undergraduate studies and that have shown interest in this field, what kinds of organizations you've been involved in, inside and outside the classroom, leadership experience, and all of this can be within the context of the programs that you are applying for. If you're undecided, it can still be in the context of our university, right? We're a research institution. We'll talk about this in a minute, but just following our mission statement of getting experience outside the classroom as well as inside the classroom, and you can kind of give us more of that information through your CV or resume. And provide a summary of your skills, abilities, and accomplishments. demonstrate how you're going to add value to our institution, and again, include content that's relevant to this opportunity. And these are the questions you can consider as you're writing more about each of these sections. What did you do? How did you do it? Why did you do it? And what was the result impact? Oops, sorry about that. I don't know why there's a mark there, but so I gave an example of the University of Cincinnati's mission statement. So I highlighted some of the words that you might pull out from mission statements to kind of highlight as you're putting together your resume, CV, or even as you're doing your writing, your essay samples and writing samples. We really focus on experience-based learning, so it's applying what you've learned inside the classroom, outside the classroom through like co-ops, internships, study abroad, research. So being able to kind of demonstrate how you've already started to do this at the high school level or at your undergrad level if you're applying to the grad level of the institution is important. We pride excellence in diversity. So, you know, if you've been involved in organizations where you've been sharing your culture with other students, say you've already been studying abroad, or just the fact that you're, that maybe you've studied abroad for a year in high school, or you've done a summer camp. So kind of highlighting those experiences. If you speak multiple languages, highlighting that as well. Innovation, and just if you've created things yourself at the high school or college level already, and listing those accomplishments, any awards that you've received, competitions that you've been a part of. And then kind of thinking outside the box. I think that we pride that as well, of course. And then service and leadership and being engaged citizens. So how have you been engaged in your community? We want to see community service work that you've done. I think even during the pandemic, if there's been things that you've done just to help your family or your community, I think that highlighting those can be really important. So really turning whatever experience you've had and kind of highlighting how you've been positively engaged. And then your personal attributes we want to kind of see shine through. So these are things that we're going to be looking for. Your quality of leadership, your contributions to the community, as we talked about already, being able to include others and help others scale barriers or get past barriers, or say you've been able to get past barriers yourself. Demonstrating this intellectual creativity and curiosity. Any special talents, of course, like if you're applying to a performance-based or visual arts program, you're going to be presenting your audition or your portfolio. Life experiences. I also would say that if you've been involved with your family, say you were tasked with taking care of an elderly relative or a sister or brother or multiple family members, putting that on your resume, especially if you're at the high school level, is something you can do because it really is part of your life. It's giving us a little bit more of a window into where you've been spending some of your time outside of the classroom as well. And then these are a few others. The commitment to diversity is important as well. And then here's an example of a resume template with just some helpful notes that's from our one of our Career Center websites, and I'll share both the UK and UC's websites in just a minute. So you're going to highlight your education. So if you're still at the high school level, obviously you're just going to be talking about your high school or secondary school, or even the third form if you're in A-levels and that level of education as well. If you're applying to graduate school, you would be putting your education for undergrad or post-undergrad as well. And you can list your projects, your positions that you've held, extracurriculars and honors and skills. So usually this is about 1 page, maybe 2 pages. It's not going to be quite as long as a CV. Here's some resources that you can access on the University of Cincinnati's website and the University of Kentucky's website. The primary difference, and I think Rachel will highlight this a little too, is between a resume and a CV is the CV typically is 2 or more pages. It includes a more comprehensive background about your information. And typically we're going to see this more on the graduate level, like a typical CV. It's not that you can't have a CV at the undergrad level or that maybe in some countries, they're calling the resume the CV. So it could just be kind of a vocabulary difference in terms of what we call it within the US and in other countries. So don't get hung up too much on the terminology, but just know that when you're applying for undergrad, we're looking for something similar to this. But when you're applying for grad, you're going to be listing more your pages of your research, your publications, your teaching experience, and there's different types of CVs depending on the program that you're applying for. And our graduate offices are can be very helpful in terms of answering any questions you have about this as well. I wanted to just take a minute to go through the Common App and where you're going to be adding these activities or extracurriculars and honors, as well as your writing samples, just to give you, for those of you that are here that are applying as freshmen. I don't know the makeup of our room in terms of who's applying as grad or undergrad, so I'm sorry if I'm focusing a little more on the undergrad side. But just to give you a highlight, as you're applying through the Common application, you're going to fill out this Common section where it goes through your profile, your family background, your education, and different levels of education, your testing. And then you're going to get to these two sections for activities and writing. The writing section will be where you'll find those prompts that I gave you the examples from, where you'll be picking a prompt and you'll be attaching or including or copying in the writing sample that you've already prepared that's up to 650 words. The activities section is actually separate from the resume, but I do really recommend that you still fill it out, but just use your resume as a guide. So just have your resume or your resume pulled up on your computer and just go ahead and copy and paste different sections from your resume into the activities section. And you'll already have everything kind of organized and categorized anyways if you put together the resume ahead of time. So this is what the section looks like. You have up to 10 spots available or different activities available to list. And if you choose an option, I wasn't able to kind of show you the whole list, but you can basically, there's, I don't know, 20 or 30 different options to choose from for activity type. So it could be anything from a job, a part-time job, to a club or community organization, to a competition that you've participated in, musical related activity, like such as a choir or an orchestra. So there's basically all of those options will be there. If you've held a leadership position, it's important to notate that here. And then to just go ahead and put those accomplishments as those bullet points from your resume. You can just go ahead and insert here. And then if you participated in all of the grade levels, go ahead and check all of them, or whichever ones, or if it's post-grad, if you took like a gap year, for example. And then we want to know how many hours per week and hours per week and weeks per year that you've spent on this activity. Because we're really looking for just not only the breadth of the activities, but also the depth. Like, have you really been participating in activities for a longer amount of time? Which is okay. Like, if you don't have quite as many activities, but we can see that you've put a lot of time. Say we have someone in gymnastics and it requires hours and hours of practice per week, then we want to see that. Or say you have those familiar responsibilities within your household, we want to see that as well. And you can rank them in order of importance. And then you have a section actually up in the education section of the Common App where you can list your honors. So it could be within the school, it could be regional, it could be national, Olympiads, competitions that you've participated in and received honors or awards. So list those here. And you can list up to 5 of the most important. And then I just wanted to kind of notate that when you're applying through the Common App, you'll fill out the Common Application General section first, and then you're actually going to add all of the universities to your dashboard that you've decided to submit an application to. And so the University of Cincinnati will have its own dashboard. So you'll choose University of Cincinnati, and then once you've added us, we'll have a few sections that we've asked you to fill out additionally. So in addition to the Common App section. And the same is probably true for UK as well. So here you'll have the general section in academics where you'll have an opportunity to fill out that personal statement question that we talked about why you're choosing the majors you're choosing. And then the activity section is not where you're listing the activities, you already did that, right? But this is actually where you can upload your copy of your resume. So definitely you can do that as well. If you're applying for nursing at UC, we also have like an additional essay specific to nursing. So some colleges and universities will have additional essays or writing samples that they ask you to complete here as well on the dashboard. And so kind of went through all those already. Okay, here's a little screenshot of our graduate application. It is actually on the University of Cincinnati's grad website, and it's our own specific University of Cincinnati application, which I think you'll find for most grad programs, unless you're applying to something like law school where they'll have more of a common application system as well. Here, you choose your selection, your concentration. So if you're applying to our higher ed, administration, ed studies major, this would be where you would put that, or say you're applying to chemical engineering at the grad level. And then you have an opportunity to upload here. It says your CV or resume. Okay, so there it does specifically say you could choose one or the other, and we basically list what the common components that we would like you to include for the CV or resume, in addition to what we've already discussed. And then the goal statement as well, as we talked about, we're going to list what we want you to include in your goal statement. And I just want to finish with finding the best fit. So there's what you want, what we want, and then kind of finding this best fit in the university. So you want a university education that will provide you with this real world experience, solid career prospects, maybe isn't too expensive, offers some grad assistantships or scholarships. We want students that are a good fit for our university, that will be able to take advantage of all of these opportunities that we're providing, that will be successful students moving forward outside of the university and as alumni. And then, you know, not all universities are going to fit for all students and vice versa. So it's important to do your research and find the best fit and keep that as your framework for when you're doing these writing samples and your resume or CV. So if University of Cincinnati is a good fit for you, definitely feel free to check out our virtual tour to get a little feel for our campus, and then check us out on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have a really nice ambassadors blog where some of our current students talk about their experience at University of Cincinnati as international students. We even have a TikTok account. So for those of you interested in TikTok, that's up there as well. And then if you have any additional questions, you can contact me. We'll provide these slides afterwards, so you'll have my contact information from the first slide, or you can just go ahead and email international.admissions@uc.edu, and that'll get to me as well. And then there's our application website. So thank you for attending. I'm gonna switch it over to Rachel so she can do her portion of the presentation, and at the end, we'll have time for you to ask both of us all of your questions, okay?
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. Let me stop sharing.
All right. So I am going to make an effort to not really repeat anything that Megan said, to give you additional information. And I'm going to focus mostly on the personal essay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the CV, but I'm going to then move into the personal essay. Just to give you a little introduction to me first, my name is Rachel Williams, and I am an international representative with the University of Kentucky. I'm part of our international center, and so my role is to really talk to prospective students and let you know what opportunities there are at our university and kind of guide you through the application and scholarship process. Before I get started, just a little bit of information about University of Kentucky. So we are an R1 research institution, so we are the top tier of research universities in the United States. And we are considered a top 100 public research university in the US. We're located in Lexington, Kentucky, which is actually not that far from Cincinnati, where Megan lives at the University of Cincinnati. We're just about 2 hours away. We are considered by US News and World Report as a top university for international students. This past year, we were a top 10 producer of US Fulbright scholars. We have 8 separate programs in the top 200 in the United States. And overall, we have more than 200 academic majors and programs. In addition to this academic information, the city where we're located, Lexington, Kentucky, is rated the #3 safest metro city in the whole of the United States. And the University of Kentucky's campus is right in the heart of downtown Lexington. We have a number of scholarships that are specific to international students. So we have 3 separate scholarship programs for our international students: the Bluegrass Spirit, which is an academic scholarship, a diversity scholarship, and our International Ambassador program. And it is possible to get more than one of these scholarships. It's possible to get all 3 of these scholarships. So as I said, we have over 200 academic programs, and a couple to highlight. Our most popular and highly rated programs are our College of Engineering, our College of Business, our healthcare professions, so medicine, dentistry, nursing, and pharmacy are very popular majors, as well as our College of Architecture. But because we are a large research institution, pretty much anything that you can think of in terms of academics, we certainly have it at our university. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to start to talk a little bit more about the CV or the resume. As Megan noted, sometimes these words are used interchangeably, sometimes they're not. In the context of the United States, sometimes CV and resume are not used interchangeably. So it is kind of important to realize that in the American context, they might be asking for very different things if they're asking for a CV or a resume specifically. So why is your CV important? What does your CV show that other application materials do not? And it's not necessarily that they don't show these, but they give a really easy format. So for the graduate level, if you're applying for a master's program or a PhD program, your CV is going to be really important in highlighting your accomplishments. So these would be academic and work accomplishments that have to do with the specific degree programs you're applying for. They show your interests. Again, this is really important at the program level. What are your research interests? What would you want to be doing at this university? And the degrees that you have already achieved. So if you were applying for a PhD program, you want to highlight on your CV where you got your bachelor's and your master's degree, and what kind of degrees those were, and what your research interests were there. So on the graduate level, the CV is actually really important for communicating this specific information about your research interests. How detailed should you get? That's something that a lot of people have as a question for their CV or resume. How much detail do you want to go into? So you really want to think about general information versus detailed information. And you do kind of want to limit the detail on your resume or CV. This is not an essay, so you don't want to have a lot of really dense text. You want to give us the broad strokes, the major highlights. So really thinking of what general information can you convey that is going to get across your accomplishments, your degrees, your work or research experience. And so what is the difference between a CV and a resume? So as we tend to use those words differently in the United States, and I do in other countries, they might use them interchangeably, mean the same thing for a resume or a CV. But there is the expectation that a resume and a CV are different in the United States. As Megan said, and I mentioned, I believe, that the CV is much more important on the graduate level than a resume. And where for an undergraduate student, we might expect a resume more than a CV. So here's just very broadly, here are the main differences between a CV and a resume. So your CV, there is no length that it should be, but it should be your complete history of academic work and credentials. The CV is really written for an academic audience. So if you were applying to a job outside of academia, you would not be using a CV probably. So the CV is for academia and academics, and it really focuses on your research and academic achievements. If you've done research, if you've gotten any grants or scholarships or awards, if you've had any publications, presentations, teaching experience, these are the things that your CV is going to focus on. The resume, on the other hand, is usually 1 to 2 pages. You do not really want your resume to ever be over 2 pages. Otherwise, people probably won't read the whole thing. The resume is more focused on a specific job. You are going to tailor your resume to the job that you are applying to, or in this case, your college application. So you're really only going to focus on relevant skills and experiences. If there is anything that you've done that would not be relevant, you are probably not going to include it in a resume. So the resume really is more of a snapshot of your skills and experiences tailored to a specific job or program. So that is very broadly the differences between a resume and a CV. So that's really all I'm going to talk about for the CV, because I think Megan did a great job of covering all of the basics and all of the things that you need to know when you're constructing your CV or resume. So I'm going to move on and talk a little bit more about the essay or the personal statement. So some key tips to pay attention to throughout the process. So why is the essay important? To go back to the basics, why do we care as American university professionals? Why do we want this piece of information in your file? For undergrad, and I'll talk about why it's important for undergraduates and then graduates. So for undergraduates, this is part of you seeing you beyond the numbers. And by the numbers, I mean your grades, your transcripts, your standardized test scores. Those are sets of numbers, but they don't really help us get to know you as a person. With your essay, you're taking this quantitative information and you're moving beyond it to show who you are as an individual. You really want to think about the questions. What do you have to offer to our community? Why do we want you to come and be a student at our university? The essay is also a demonstration of your skills. And for non-native English speakers, the essay does serve the additional purpose for demonstrating your mastery of English. Of course, you are probably going to be taking one of the language proficiency exams, the TOEFL or IELTS or Duolingo. But this is giving us a different way to see your mastery of English. The essay can be a really great assessment of future success. To write a successful college essay is an indicator to us that you will be able to write successful writing assignments in your college courses. And in addition to the general essay, there are also scholarship essays that you might have to write if you are applying for scholarships. So the essay can be important in getting scholarship money as well as for general admissions. Now, for graduate admissions, the essay has a little bit more of a focused importance. The graduate essay or personal statement should tell us more about why you want to pursue that subject area. So what experiences do you have in terms of your study, your work, internship, research, that really does relate to the program that you are applying to? The graduate essay can also talk about your future goals in the field, why you want to get a PhD in electrical engineering, for example. What are your career goals with that? And can talk about how you fit into that specific program, not as only why you want to pursue a PhD in electrical engineering, but why you want to pursue a PhD in electrical engineering at University of Kentucky or at University of Cincinnati. And again, for non-native English speakers, this is another way of demonstrating your mastery of English, how well you are going to be able to communicate in written form as a graduate student. So there really are some different goals, some different things that you want to hit with the essay on an undergraduate and a graduate level. The graduate level is certainly more focused on a specific program and specific degree. For the undergraduate essay, there are two main categories. If you're thinking about, well, what am I going to be asked to write about? What kind of an essay am I going to have to write? There are really two main categories. A general, where you're going to have freedom in what to write, or a response to a specific question. And you'll usually have a possibility of responding to more than one question. You won't have one question, you'll have kind of a range and you can choose one. So here are some general considerations that you should think about, whatever kind of a question it is, whatever kind of an essay it is, graduate or undergraduate. Here are some general pieces of advice that are going to serve you well. So first of all, make sure you understand and answer the question or writing prompt. Don't have it in your head that you want to write about this certain thing if that's not part of the writing prompt. This is something that admissions will take note of as they're reading your essay, whether or not you addressed what you were asked to address. You want to tell a story. You know, as I said, this is about us getting to know you as a person. This is about showing who you are as an individual. And so you want to really create a narrative for us. This is what's going to draw us in. Creating kind of a story structure where we have a beginning, we have a middle, and we have an end that wraps things up nicely. Be specific. This is important. Don't be general, but talk about specific events or from your life, not necessarily an event, but tell specific stories. Don't just say, well, academic achievement is important to me. Tell us academic achievement is important to me in the relation of an experience you've had, or something to do with your own life and your personal experiences. When you're writing, concentrate on your opening. If you think about it, the admissions officers who are reading your essay are reading hundreds of essays, right? You want to stand out. And the best way to stand out is to start right at the beginning. You want your introduction, your first sentences to be really memorable and to be really strong. So really put a lot of thought into how you are going to start this essay in order to really grab the attention of the people who are reading it, the people who have read so many essays, and make them think, oh, I really want to read more. I want to find out what's going to come next. This is really interesting to me. So putting a lot of effort into your opening paragraph really does pay off in terms of making an impression. Tell what you know. This does seem obvious, but I do like to emphasize it. There is not one particular thing that we are looking for that is impressive, for example. So don't feel like you have to concentrate on an area that you don't have a lot of knowledge about. Really think about, before you start to write, what can I speak about with some kind of authority, right? Don't stretch yourself into speaking about something that you don't know very much about, but you think it sounds impressive in your essay. And the other thing is, don't do the bare minimum. Don't just try to really get through that word count, and as soon as you reach the minimum word count, stop. Really, I'm not saying you have to go to the maximum word count, but your goal should not be to get to the minimum word count. Your goal should be to, again, to tell a complete story, to have a complete narrative that is going to be interesting and going to be compelling. So of course you want to keep word count in mind on a certain level. You don't want to go over word count either, but you really want to make sure that you are not simply stopping at a certain point because, okay, you've reached the minimum word count and now you can just be done with it. So that is something to keep in mind. What should you avoid? There are certain things that you should maybe stay away from. A topic that's too controversial. I wouldn't say definitely stay away from anything that could be the slightest bit controversial, but if you do choose a topic that you think would be controversial, make sure you have a really sound reasoning for choosing it. If this is something that's very personal to you, or that you have a lot invested in, you certainly shouldn't make it the goal of your essay to write something that people are only going to agree in, but don't try to choose a controversial topic just because it's controversial, right? Make sure that you have a sound reasoning behind your choice. Don't write also about what you think other people are writing about. Don't, if you're talking to other people about their applications and everyone is writing about a certain topic, don't let that make you think, oh, I have to write about this topic now. No, again, you should write about a topic that has personal meaning to you. You want to avoid simply listing your accomplishments. So as Megan talked about and showed us in the resume, and when she's showing how the Common App works, there are places for you to list your accomplishments. So your essay should not simply become another place for you to list off the things that you have accomplished. If you want to talk about something that you've listed as an accomplishment in another area of your essay, make sure that you have a compelling reason, that there's a story there, that you're taking this accomplishment and really fitting it into the broader narrative of something that illustrates something about you. And avoid, and this goes into avoiding repetition. You don't want the various areas of your application to simply repeat information that can be found elsewhere. So really think about that as well when you are deciding what you want to write about. So some questions to consider before you write. Really some things to think about to get you started, especially if the essay prompt is pretty broad. So you want to think about what is special or unique about you and your life story. What is setting you apart? What details of your life might help admissions to better understand you, to get a better picture of who you are? What do you think sets you apart from other applicants? What are your college or career goals? Do you have a set? You don't have to have a set career goals at this point when you're applying for undergraduate, but if you do, that might make for a compelling topic for your essay. If your goal is to, go to medical school, or if your goal is to be a marine biologist, that might be a compelling subject to talk about. Or what are the most compelling reasons you can give for admissions to be interested in you? So these are just kind of questions to get you started. As you're really thinking about, okay, what should my essay be about? Here are some questions that can kind of guide you and spark you to really think about, hey, here's something about me that's a little bit different that I think would show admissions who I am and what I can bring to the university. So here are some sample topics, and I think that this does mirror what Megan showed you earlier, so I won't take too much time to dwell on this. And so these are the instructions that you see both at the University of Kentucky's application and on the Common application. So it says, please write an essay of 250 to 650 words on the topic below. So going back to what I said earlier about don't do just the bare minimum, you'll see that this word count range is very, very wide. 250 to 650 words is a huge range. Do not think, so there's two traps to avoid here. The trap of, okay, I'm going to only write 250 words and then I'm done, no matter if my essay is really finished. And the trap of, I'm definitely going to write all 650 words, even if I've said everything I need to say. Both of those can be dangerous. I'm not saying you shouldn't write only 250 words, and I'm not saying you shouldn't write all 650 words, but what you really want to pay attention to is, have I said everything that I need to say? And if the answer to that is no, keep writing beyond the 250 words. If the answer to that is yes, stop and don't think you have to go up to the 650 words. So that's really something to keep in mind. So here are a couple of questions, sample questions. If you're using the Common application, which University of Cincinnati and University of Kentucky are both on, there is kind of a wide range of questions, which is really nice because you can choose one that speaks to you. So this first one is on the Common App, and it's also on University of Kentucky's application. Think of a time when you were dealing with a challenge, either personal, academic, or work-related. How did you handle that? Did you seek support? And if so, who did you seek support from? Here, there are two more that I've chosen just to be illustrative examples, and you can kind of see that they're broad enough that they're going to give you a wide range of things you could discuss. One about your own background, identity, or interest that you feel is really important about you, or one about a topic, idea, or concept that you find very engaging. And then the last one, as Megan mentioned earlier, is basically sharing an essay on the topic of your choice. One that you've already written that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. And I think there are pitfalls in the share an essay on the topic of your choice, that it could be one that you've already written. I think that's really attractive to a lot of students. You'll look at that and you'll think, oh good, I have an essay I wrote for school, or I have an essay I wrote for a scholarship application. I can just put that in here. You certainly can do that. And it might be appropriate, but you really want to think long and hard before you simply decide to plug in an essay you've already written. Am I using this essay because it really is appropriate? Or am I using this essay because this is going to take a lot of time to write a new one, and it would be easiest to put this one in? So really make sure that you are going to use an essay that is relevant, that you're not simply using an essay that you already have simply because it's going to save you some time. So these are the things that are going to make your essay good. What makes an essay bad? So this is just in general, things to really think about as you're choosing what to write an essay about. What can make your essay bad is topic choice. If you choose a topic that shows poor judgment or lack of maturity, if you kind of show through your topic choice that you're unaware of the outside world, or you're focused only on yourself. And I think that's an easy trap to fall into with the college essay, because on one hand, you do want to describe your own accomplishments and why you would be a good fit at a university. But part of showing how you'd be a good fit is showing how you interact with your community or the wider world, or issues that are important to you. If you choose something that's boring or lack of personality, really think, Megan touched on this too when she was saying common things that students write about. Don't try to be innovative, right? Don't try to write on something that you think everyone is necessarily going to write about. You want to show your personality. You want to show who you are. The other thing that can make a college essay bad are execution problems. So execution problems in this sense meaning faulty writing, a lot of errors in spelling, grammar, word choice, or punctuation, or if you did not follow instructions, if your essay is too short, if your essay is too long, if you don't answer the writing prompt that it's asking you to answer. These are some things that would make a college essay bad or not as good as some other choices. And just to finish up, here are a few frequently asked questions. Questions that when I do a presentation like this, or I'm talking to students or emailing with, these are questions that students often have. So, the first one I kind of just addressed. Are spelling and grammar important? Yes, spelling and grammar are absolutely important. Now, on the one hand, we are aware that when we are reading an application from a native speaker of English, someone who grew up in the United States and spent their life speaking English, or when we are reading an essay that comes from an international student. So we always keep that in mind. We are not expecting you to write exactly the same as a student who went to an American high school to write, right? That is something that we have that awareness of. So we do keep that in mind, but this also can be really important in terms of showing that you can really pay attention to your work, that you can be a quality student, and you can pay attention to these details like your spelling and grammar and punctuation. Who reads the essays is a common question. So the people who read the essays are people like myself and Megan. We are international admissions specialists, and that means that we deal with international applications a lot, and this is part of our job. Is there one topic that's best? No, there is not one topic that's best, because every student is different. What's important to one student might not be important to another student. One student might really want to focus on the academics. Another student might want to write about another area of their life that is important. So there's absolutely not one best topic. Isn't it best to use an already written essay, as that will be easiest? That is not always the case. If you are going to use a pre-written essay, which you certainly can do, and if you have something that fits, absolutely, but really make sure that it does fit. Make sure you are choosing this essay for the right reasons, that you're not just choosing this essay because it'll make the application process a little bit easier, but because you really think this is the best thing that's going to illustrate to universities and colleges who you are and what you are capable of. Can I ask anyone for help? Absolutely. You should 100% ask people for help. Who should you ask? Well, you can certainly, on an informal level, you might ask your friends or your classmates or your parents, just so they can tell you what they think. That, oh, this was really interesting, or, oh, I wanted to know more about this part. You should write more about this, or you repeated yourself. So an audience like that are good for just giving you some general feedback, or to get more specific feedback about how your essays would relate to an application, asking your high school counselors or your EdUSA counselors can be great resources for helping you out. What you do have to be aware if you want help from your high school or EdUSA, however, is you need to think about how much time constraints they have, how many students want the exact same thing from them. So if you go to your high school counselor and you say, I'd really love for you to read this essay and give me feedback, and it's due tomorrow, you might not get any help from them, right? They might simply not have time. So if you are asking for feedback from a high school counselor or Education USA counselor, make sure you are doing so in a way that's respectful of their time and that acknowledges that they have many students who are going to be asking them for things like this.
Thank you for the tip, by the way, Rachel. Thank you for the for introducing our own help to the students, because we are a resource that exists here, but not many know about, to be honest. However, we do have a lot of students coming in, and again, as stated in the beginning, just do not shy away from reaching out, you know? All right, go ahead.
Aren't really aware of the resources that they have right there, who are there to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it from me, from my presentation. So I guess if there's time for questions or comments, and I'll just also say that I'll put my email address and website in the chat as well if anyone wants to get in touch, if you have questions for me personally or questions about any of our programs at University of Kentucky. But I will stop my screen share for a question and answer time.
Great, and I
Thank you
can.
so much, Rachel, for this. Megan, okay. So I see Mona. Hello, Mona. Mona is one of our prominent competitive college club students. We work with them closely every year so they can join universities in the US. Hi, Ala. Okay.
So yeah, so Mona's questions was, do I have to write my essay in a first-person perspective, or can I choose whichever perspective amplifies what I'm trying to get across in my essay? And that's a very interesting question. I think that most essays are written in the first person simply because you're writing about yourself. So, but that does not mean it has to be in the first person. And I would also say it could certainly make you stand out if you don't write your essay in the first person. But if you are not, if it's an essay that's about you, about your accomplishments, make sure that you have a reason for choosing a different perspective, that it's well thought out. So it certainly does not have to be written in the first person perspective. You can choose a different perspective, but kind of make sure if you're doing so, you do have like a point and a reason that you're doing this. I don't know if Megan has any other feedback.
No, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I was going to say, I guess we can both put our contact information in the chat right now too, just so you all have it, just because I don't know. I know we're on for another about 25 minutes, but just so you have that, I'll put mine in as well.
Brilliant. Okay.
Oops.
I see Ala as well. Ala is asking about certain books that could help with personal statements.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any book recommendations really. I would honestly, there are so many great resources available on the web that I would not necessarily counsel you to buy a book. But there are going to be, you know, talking to people like us, people like EdUSA counselors, kind of looking on college readiness websites, of which there are many. You will be able to find a lot of advice and a lot of examples. So I honestly don't think that I would recommend buying a book specifically, unless Megan, you think differently.
No, I think that there's a lot of online resources out there. I think that also it's going to depend on, have you already decided what you're interested in studying? Are you kind of coming in as an undecided student, which is okay as well? I don't know if we talked about this, but I think in the US, there's a really high percentage, like it's something like over 50% of freshmen either come in undecided or change their major within the first year. I think it might even be higher, like 70%. So, it's okay to be undecided. I think that maybe reading some books just to kind of get to know your personality, like maybe taking some of those like strength finder tests and things can help too while you're in high school, and can kind of maybe help as you're preparing to write your essay to kind of decide what you want to talk about in terms of like your strengths and what we would want to know about you. That would be maybe the books I would look for, but I think the resources for writing the actual essays, you can find all of that online. Remarkable essays that you can't forget. I feel like I knew someone was going to ask this question, and I was trying to rack my brain. I have actually a list of, I kind of keep a list of essays, but I'm always afraid to like share them since, you know, I'm afraid maybe a student would recognize a clip of their essay even without a name. So do you have any off the top of your head, Rachel?
I don't have any off the top of my head. And what I would say really is it's not like, there are certain essays where you see an essay about that subject a lot. Right? And that does not mean it's a bad subject. There, you know.
But you remember that more, right?
Yeah. That are going to be relevant, some kind of academic activity or competition or sports competition. These are very common, but what sticks out is not necessarily, of course, it can be someone who writes about something completely different, or if you take this common topic and you approach it in a very different way.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I did think of one example when you're done talking, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's go ahead.
Well, no, I was just thinking how you were talking about how it doesn't always have to be a really wild and unique experience. Like it could be like an everyday common experience that could be unique to the reader depending on how you frame it. So I'm thinking of a student from Vietnam that wrote an essay about riding on a motorbike with his mom and his family, like to and from school every day. And the way he wrote it was just so unique in terms of the experience. And yet, if you're from Vietnam and you live in that country, you're riding on motorbikes every day. That's not like an uncommon experience for them. But for me, as a reader in the US, it actually was, if you can approach it from a unique perspective and kind of tell it as a story, like this was really like a story of his experience with his mom and some growth and like maturity that happened along the way, like from kind of going from like a childhood to adulthood type transition. And I can't remember all the specifics, but I think if you can take like an everyday scenario, it might not be an everyday scenario to us as readers, depending on where you're applying, which country. You know, obviously if you're applying to to a university within Vietnam, like that might not be the topic to choose, although you never know, because it's really how you're telling the story. Because any story can really bring the reader in if it's told like in the right way.
Example of one on like a common topic, but that took a turn for me as I was thinking about it. I have a student who wrote, she was part of like a math competition club at her school, but her essay was all about how much she hated it. And it was terrible for her. But then she turned that into a positive because it made her kind of explore other interests, and it turned into how she joined like a poetry society, and this was really life-changing for her. So she kind of made this story very funny by, you know, I think I'm going to read an essay about somebody's accomplishments in math competitions, and it turns into a description of like how this was such a negative experience that led her towards something new. So I would say also in terms of, we tell you don't make your essay very negative, but what she did there was she took this negative story and then turned it into a positive, how it helped her discover, more things about herself and interests that she never would have explored before. So there's two questions that are kind of similar. What's something you consider a red flag in an essay, or what are the types or genre of personal statements that are a total or instant turnoff? I don't know if you want to start with that, if you have any.
I would definitely say if a student's going to talk about, we do have those topics where it's share an experience and what you've learned from it and like a mistake you've made and how you've grown. But maybe be careful, like if it's something in regards to like academic dishonesty or cheating, that might not be the time to go into sharing a lot of details about us. If there's an additional information section on the Common App where sometimes students will share details about like an extenuating circumstance or something they need to share with us, or there's counselors that will sometimes write letters to us or teachers. But I don't know if that would be something you would want to put in your essay. I'm trying to think of another red flag.
Yeah, for me, that was the first thing that I thought of in terms of a red flag.
Right.
Anything that would deal with you admitting to academic dishonesty in any way is certainly not something, hopefully it's not an experience that you have, first of all. And second of all, it's not something that you should at all be discussing in a college essay. Something else that would be a red flag would be anything that was in any way disparaging or intolerant towards any racial, ethnic, or religious group or any kind of diversity whatsoever. Fortunately, that's not something that we see very often, but that would certainly be a worrisome red flag when we think of, well, how would you be part of our diverse community, where we're proud of having a diverse community and we celebrate that. So that would certainly be something.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. Yep.
Yeah. So what is the secret trick as a reader you see that makes a unique essay?
I think it's the ability to tell a story, right? Like to be able to make me laugh or really like pull on your heartstrings. Like there are always those essays that, there are some topics that someone might say could be cliche, but I do feel like if a student is talking about an experience like on a community service trip to another country or to like a impoverished neighborhood, like even in their country or in their city, if it's told the right way, it can really pull on my heartstrings as I'm reading it, and really does affect me and really gives me a window into like the type of person they are. So I think it really is kind of how you tell that story.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like, the story structure, pull us in and make us interested in you as a person. The best essays are the essay where I kind of see, like, okay, this is who this person is. Not just like, again, the list of accomplishments, right? But yeah, the trick, right. I don't know if it's really a trick, but really think about how can I, as you're writing, how can I show who I am? How can I show what's important to me or what kind of a person I am? I think that is that's really what to think about.
And I think having other people read your essays from like a variety of different backgrounds, like maybe have a teacher read it or have someone from Education USA if they're available and they can read it, or a family member, someone that's is currently in college, like maybe different age groups, different experiences. It's good to kind of get different perspectives on it. Don't overthink it too much, but I think that having some feedback is also helpful, of course.
Yeah. Are there some topics that aren't relevant in the US that are maybe relevant in other parts of the world or countries? And should I write about those topics if they matter to me? Absolutely. We want to. That would give us an interesting perspective. That would tell us about you, what's important to you. What I think that you would want to be concerned about is make sure that your essay reader has enough context, right? You might want if it's something that's really important in your country or to your culture, but not necessarily in the United States, you might think about that and think, well, is there a little bit of background that I would need to give that helps explain why this is important or relevant? But absolutely, because we do really want to hear what is important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How can I don't put the essay writing. Let's see. How can I turn ordinary things that I do daily into an impressive piece of writing? Well, I mean, I think it takes practice. I think you can't just sit down and start writing for the specific essay. You have to be writing essays. I mean, you're going to be writing them for school anyways, but if you're not writing enough essays for school, if you're in a curriculum that's much more like test-based or research-based, then I think start practicing. And you know, you can probably go online and find a lot of different like YouTube tutorials that you can kind of go through to help you with this a little bit. But I think practice is going to be the key. Telling a story, I think just taking into account like what Rachel said about the beginning, middle, end, and really giving us context as well if needed.
Yeah, I agree. It's very hard to about taking ordinary things and turning them into an impressive piece of writing. I think that's all of our goal when we're writing something. And but yeah, I would say really, because you are going to be writing about a common set of things as somebody who's writing a college essay, to really think about, well, okay, this experience that everyone has had, well, how is it different from you?
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
unique about it? And I really think that that's the key with a lot of these common topics, that thinking about what about you or your situation is unique or different with it. So this next question is, some of them mainly focus on reiterating the extracurriculars and showing off the honors they had, while admissions offices say this is a slippery slope usually students fall into when they first start to craft their essays. What is your personal opinion about that? I agree, it is very much a slippery slope. You don't want to repeat the list of accomplishments that we're seeing in another place in your essay. Now, if one of the accomplishments is something that's very important to you and feel has really shaped you as a person, take this and explore it. But again, and I think Megan and I keep repeating this, but because it's important, craft a story around it. Don't just list, I was on my high school's debate team and I got first place in this debate competition. Well, we can read that. We can see the list of your accomplishments. But if you feel that this was a formative experience to you or taught you important things about yourself or formed your interest, take this activity or this certain accomplishment and make it a story. Make it a narrative and show us how and why this is important, would be my perspective.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I would say I'm thinking of a student who was selected into like one of the Department of State programs where they study abroad over the summer at a university, and they had listed that as one of their activities, of course, but then they talked a lot more about that experience and kind of told a story about how they were like why they chose to do it, and what they've learned from the experience and how that influenced their decision to apply to the US to study at the undergraduate level. I think that was appropriate for their essay, and it helped to kind of highlight that prestigious program that they had done. So I think that that's pertinent. But yeah, I think that I have seen a lot of essays where students have talked about competitions that they've won, but not really framed it in like a unique way or perspective. And so those they don't stand out as much to me as I'm reading them.
Yeah.
It may or may not hurt your application. I mean, it is one piece of our holistic review process. But I think that it's also not helping us to get to know you any better in that respect. Yeah. Let's see. Majors. Popular words. I will have to say that if I read an essay, I've had some essays I've read where students have used the same, a lot of different types of words, and almost like they had a thesaurus in front of them as they were writing the essay and just trying to use as many big words as they could. And sometimes that comes across as not very authentic. So I think if you can weave larger vocabulary words into your essay more naturally, that's great. And I think that that will show that you are a polished writer. But if you're just using them every other word, then I think it's going to be very obvious to us that maybe you're trying a little too hard to use those words. Let's see, those vocabulary words. But I understand, I mean, some students love vocabulary words. So if that's something you want to highlight, but maybe do it in a different way. If you can highlight it in a different, frame it a little bit differently. List those clubs and organizations you've been part of that, that allow you to show that love for vocabulary.
So what makes a personal statement stand out from your perspective? It can be a variety of things, and I think that there's different ways for a personal statement to stand out. And I think on the one hand, there's writing about a topic that I never would have thought of writing about for a college essay. So that's one thing that can make you stand out, writing about a very different topic. Or taking a topic that a lot of people write about, but approaching it in a very unique way. And it's really hard to give very specific advice because I do think that's very, it's very personal, and there are a lot of ways you can stand out, but those are the two that immediately would come to mind for me. Treating a familiar topic in a new and exciting way, or having a topic that's going to be attention grabbing right away would certainly would stand out to me. Can I write my essay about an interest that's different from the major I'm pursuing? Megan, if you...
Of course, yeah. I think that oftentimes the fact that we have that personal statement on the UC application where you're going to tell us why you're interested in pursuing those top 3 major choices does allow the flexibility to write about another topic in the essay. If you're going to grad school, however, that's not going to be the case. You are typically going to be writing about your interest in that specific field. Is that correct, Rachel? Would you say the same on your end?
And I would say keep in mind too that most American universities you can apply as an undeclared major. So
exactly.
You necessarily have to have a major declared. So absolutely, you don't have to write about your major.
Exactly. What if I'm telling someone else's story that had a great impact on how I'm feeling right now? Oh, I'm thinking right now. Is that a veiled personal statement topic to talk about? I don't know if I quite understand that one.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I guess you don't want it to be like a biography or a recitation of something that happened to someone else.
Right. It needs to be framed around you. So if that impacted you, or if learning about their story has impacted you, like how has that impacted you? How has that impacted your life? You can give us a little background about that story, but your story is not about that story. Your story is about how that story impacted you. So you gotta have to bring it back to yourself. We still, even though we don't, well, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Yep.
Yeah.
Personal statements. Is it okay if my extracurricular activities don't have anything to do with my major? Yes, because you are showing us extracurriculars, again, are just one piece of your application. So we are looking at your curriculum that you've studied, the exams that you've been taking. So I would say that those should usually relate to the major that you'll be studying, or at least give you the foundation that you need. So if you're going into engineering, you need to have that strong foundation in math, physics. Typically, we're looking also for chemistry for some of our majors for the engineering level, but definitely physics and math, right? If you're going into, if you're going to go into like a music major, you're going to have to do an audition for that major, and that's going to be, we're going to put a lot of priority in that piece of your application first and foremost. So, but extracurriculars definitely can be outside of your major for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I would just say, keep in mind that you can enter American universities as undeclared major.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and it's also it's not uncommon at all to change your major within your first semester, right? You might be exposed as your first semester at American University to a major you didn't know existed, or you might think, well, I don't like this math major as much as I thought I would. I'm more interested in the finance aspect of it, right? So there's a flexibility around your major within like your first semester, your first year or two. So yeah, we don't expect extracurriculars to be just major based.
Well, yeah, if you think about our curriculum, I mean, most of our programs are 4 or maybe even 5-year programs. So it does allow, like, we always have those general requirements that you're taking across all disciplines. So you're, even at the university level in the US, you're not just going to be taking engineering and math and physics classes. You are still going to need to take those humanities electives and those English classes and those foreign language requirements and whatnot. So you have a lot of electives you can choose from as well. Okay. Model UN. Let's see. Oh. Yes, yeah. So if you were involved in the Model UN organization, like at both your old school and your new school, you've transferred secondary schools, is that the question? I think, can you just put them under the same category? Yes, like you can say you were involved all whichever years that you were involved and any positions that you've held in that organization.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm going to explain. That's up to Education USA. I don't know if we're only using the chat box or if you want students to ask the question.
Andrew is one of our CCC students as well. I think if the question has, Andrew, did this answer your question? If not, and you want to explain further, you can.
I mean, what my suggestion would be for an activity like this, where you've held different roles in the same activity, is you could have, Model UN as your major point, and then underneath it in a bullet point, note the different roles, right? So it's kind of like clarification within the one entry.
Right. Thanks. And definitely if you're involved in the competitive college club, highlighting that as in your resume, CV, or on your activities section. And then if you're working with Education USA, there's even a section in the Common App where you can list an organization that you've worked with through the process. So you can list like the advising center there just as one of the resources that you've utilized, and kind of showing that additional interest in studying specifically in the US. And that's helpful as well.
Okay, it seems like questions are coming to a screeching halt, apparently.
Okay.
Anybody else got anything they want to ask? Come on, don't stop on us like that. Anything?
I guess there's 1 minute left. They're very punctual,
No. We have time. We have time. We can go. We can continue. But I'm just saying that there aren't any questions anymore. That Andrew question was really long. I thought that there would be others. So, okay. Right, I think you've mentioned sharing your presentation, the one that you've used earlier. I would like to ask you if we can use some of that information as well when we're like advising students regarding what to like the do's and don'ts and this and that. So thank you again.
I'll send my presentation along as well. But yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to talk to everyone, and I put my contact information in the chat box. If you have any questions about the applications in general or about University of Kentucky, just don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That's nice of you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone as well. I appreciate this opportunity, and I just put my email back in there. I had my WhatsApp a little bit earlier on, so I think when you get our presentations, we'll have all of our contact information there as well. And thank you for your time, and just reach out to us. We're here as a resource. We want to help you through the process.
You will. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
All
Have a
right.
great evening.
Have a
Bye.
great evening.
You as
Bye.
well.
Bye.
Bye.